is Rebecca Johnson, and I am a labor liaison with the law firm of Fine, Olin, and Anderman. Today, I am joined by partner Vincent Rosillo, and we are going to be discussing deaths that occur in the course of employment. So, welcome, Vinny. How are you?
I'm good, Rebecca. Although the death claims are a really small number of overall workers' compensation claims, the effect that they have on those left behind, the spouse and the children, can be devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do we advise people to do when a family member dies at work?
There are a number of ways to have a death claim. The most obvious one is where someone has an accident and they immediately die as a result of that accident. An example of that would be a car accident where you have a car accident and immediately the occupant is killed, or someone unfortunately gets crushed by a machine. Those types of cases are usually easier to establish because the cause of death is pretty clear that the work activities caused it.
Okay, so aside from those types of accidents, how else would a death claim be established? I know we've had, unfortunately, quite a number of cases throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Would those cases be considered a death claim as well?
That's a good point, and they could be. There are ways where sometimes people have an accident and then a few weeks or months later, as a result of that accident, they die. So the COVID-19 is a good example of that, where they come down with COVID-19, and as a result of the complications from that illness, they suffer lung problems or heart problems, and they die from that. So that would be a death case. As with a heart attack, someone has a heart attack, and a few months or years later, they die of a heart attack. That is possible to be a death claim.
Absolutely. So are there other situations other than accidents that could lead to death claims? We do hear about people who are exposed to asbestos, for instance, and those people may die from their exposure. Could that be a death claim as well?
Yes, there are some occupational diseases especially that a prolonged exposure to can lead to death. So we have people who are exposed to asbestos for 20 years or so, and they no longer work at that site. They're retired, but they die of an asbestos-related disease. That would be a death case, for example.
So just to address some key questions, who is eligible for death benefits?
So the law first looks to see if there's a surviving spouse or minor children. If there aren't any minor children or a surviving spouse, the law looks to see who was dependent on the decedent. So if there was a parent or even a grandparent that was dependent financially on the decedent, they would be eligible to collect. If there wasn't a dependent person, then the parents would be entitled to a $50,000 payout. And if there wasn't any surviving parents, the $50,000 would be payable to the decedent's estate.
Okay, so with the $50,000 lump sum, but how much would a surviving spouse or children actually get?
So the surviving spouse and the minor children share the weekly benefit that will be payable. So they would receive 2/3 of the decedent's average weekly wage, subject to the maximums permitted by law. As the children age out, the spouse would then collect the balance of the 2/3, and should the spouse remarry, they would receive 2 years' worth of a lump sum payment.
Okay, so other than the weekly or lump sum benefits, are there any other benefits that people could be eligible for?
So the person who paid the funeral expenses would be reimbursed, and that amount depends upon the geographical area of the person, but they would get reimbursed for the funeral expenses.
Sure, so this sounds like a lot. Are these cases hard to establish?
As you can imagine, they are very hard to establish. So there are various forms that have to be submitted, and the medical evidence has to be obtained. And generally speaking, we have to take the testimony of lay witnesses, as well as doctors.
Okay, so what are the time limits to file these types of claims?
Generally speaking, you have 2 years from the date of death in which to file a claim with the New York State Workers' Compensation Board. And that would be either the widow, the widower, the children, someone who's making the claim would have the responsibility of filing for the benefit.
Okay, so just to be clear, we are talking about situations where the death was somehow caused by workplace activities. So what about situation where someone already has a case but dies of unrelated causes? Do those benefits stop?
Unfortunately, if someone dies of an unrelated cause, then generally the benefits would stop. So the surviving spouse or minor children would no longer be entitled to receive that weekly benefit. There are some situations where the state or the surviving spouse could collect if the person had an award for a permanent loss of use to a limb. It is possible to get an award for that permanent loss, or if someone was already classified as having a permanent disability, permanent partial disability, and they were entitled to receive a set number of weeks worth of benefits, it is possible that the surviving spouse could collect the balance of that surviving period of time.
Okay, understandable. So I think it's definitely important to note that it's always a really good idea to consult with an attorney whenever a death occurs in a workers' compensation claim. So for those people who have any questions, make sure that you contact us 1-800-522-9001 or our website at www.foalaw.com. Anything else to add, Vinny?
Like you said, these are very special situations and very fact specific. So even if you think that the death may be related and you're not sure, it definitely is worth your while to contact an attorney.
Perfect. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.